I'm Sarah Knight, and welcome to It's Got Pockets, where just like finding the surprise pockets in your favourite trousers, I'm bringing you perfect pockets of joy and realness. Every week, I'm having unfiltered conversations with women who crack the feck on, even when life gets proper lifey. Women with experience, expertise and wisdom. Because sometimes the best stories start in the middle. Women who've been there, done that, and they're still figuring it out. Join me for real talk, useful tactics, and all the swears in between that make your life and business feel that bit more manageable. Hello. Welcome to our next episode of It's Got Pockets. I am here with the fabulous Jane Druker. Now, I have to have a little bit of confession. I have interviewed Jane before, and when I decided to do the It's Got Pockets podcast, I realised that I needed Jane back on because she is a font of all knowledge. She's a fashion and beauty journalist. She writes for The Independent, Woman and Home, Marie Claire, Vogue, Times. I think there's all the publications there. And when I was doing a little bit of stalking, what I hadn't realised is you've also won a Winning My Mind award for the Tops Auntie Let's Talk health campaign, which we'll come back to. Written a book, The Go-To Guide to Your Perfect Diet. Has a blog, and you talk on stages about what you've learned as a woman, which is why I want you to share your knowledge, your stories with us. But also my guilty pleasure of when we were talking last time, Jane, was absolutely, you used to work for Lynn Franks. And
I did.
For the people out there that don't know, Lynn Franks is the PR agency that Absolutely Fabulous was based on, wasn't it? So welcome, Jane. Hello.
Correct. Hello. Nice to be here.
So let's start with, where are you now? How are you approaching life right now? What's your sort of thought process on life?
Well, I do actually have a really sort of definite approach to a new year, actually. So my husband's actually South American. So on New Year's Eve, when the clock strikes midnight, we do 12 grapes, which is a traditional South American thing. So basically, the 12 grapes are a wish for every month of the year, which is a really nice...
Not before.
Really? I mean, I hadn't either, obviously, till I met him, but it's a really focusing thing. So before I do it, I write down my wishes for the year. They don't have to be in the right order necessarily, but it just sort of focuses the mind, like, what would you like to happen this year? How are you actually going to make that happen? It's a good focusing tool. I try and keep myself on track.
And how do you do that? Do you write it down? Is it somewhere?
Yes. And I write everything down. I mean, obviously, so many people I work with now don't have a diary. They do everything on their phones. I am a completely different generation. I write everything down. I don't feel safe unless I've got an actual physical diary. So I find it's very good, actually, to write things down. And we also have like a blackboard in our kitchen, which has got the wishes for the year. So it's just a focusing thing. It doesn't mean you have to tick everything off at all, but it's a nice way of looking at the following year.
And then do you reflect when you get to the end of the year on what you've done and how you've done it?
Yeah, and might just rub the blackboard clean.
Yeah.
And I mean, it may or may not have been achieved. I mean, I don't think the thing is to always achieve everything, but it is really focusing to sort of think, what actually would make my life really good in the next year.
So what's on the list for this year?
Well, lots of travel. I mean, I adore travel. The older I get, the more I want to travel. I went on a trip to, I think I spoke to you earlier last year. I hadn't been yet. I went to China at sort of the end of last year. It was a really mind-opening trip for many, many reasons. It was not sort of how I thought it was going to be on some level and exactly how I thought it would be on another. It was very, the Chinese are, obviously I adore their food. The people were amazing. They have a very kind of, what's the word? They're very in tune with the universe, you know? But the shocking thing about going to China, truthfully, was that the younger people who had been through their parents going through communism for many years and living a life that was not sort of your own.
Yeah.
There were certain things that you had to do. There's a saying for it, and it's called like lying flat. And what it means is, in the eyes of the younger generation, they are not interested in getting married, having kids, having a job that's really exhausting, earning loads of money for, I don't know, rent, because they often don't buy their own homes. And I kind of thought that was really interesting. There was a real, we don't want to do things the way our parents did things. In fact, it made them miserable. And I actually found that really fascinating. And I found, because mainly I was with guides, because obviously I don't speak Chinese, and I thought they were very honest, and I thought their attitude was really interesting. I mean, there's a sadness associated with that, but it was a real learning curve for me. It wasn't exactly what I expected. I expected that kind of classic, quite superstitious, do things in a very different style, don't deviate from and actually we're talking about a very different time. I loved it.
You can see that being reflected across continents, actually, that there's a real different feeling of how, our younger generation are approaching life, and how to live your life, and do you work yourself to the bone, and I was talking to someone the other week, and they were talking about leadership challenges and things, and they were talking about how, well, that's the way we've always done things.
Yeah.
And therefore, why aren't people working as hard as we did? We were working till 1 o'clock in the morning, and then we got up, and then we worked again, and then we played hard. And I was like, but is that the right thing?
I don't think there's any right, there's any wrong. We are all a product of when we grew up. And I read a really interesting piece in the Times this weekend. It was Keir Starmer. It was a letter from Keir Starmer, because there was a survey conducted about Gen Z, which is kind of the 20 to 27-year-old. And they were kind of saying, super disappointed with university life, like super no fun. Whereas in my day, that was just 3 years of like getting pissed and having a really good time. It also got paid for on the main by the government. We didn't have to struggle for it and then pay it back for the rest of our careers. I think there's a lot of dissatisfaction with people, and I really don't blame them. In fact, I'm the mother of a 22-year-old. He works incredibly hard and he's got a great job, and he worked through uni as well. And it's kind of what you have to do, work through uni.
Yeah. And that's the thing, isn't it? Is that time of your life that should absolutely be about fun without responsibility. And if you're lucky enough, it's a semi-independent life, isn't it? Because if you're in that, if you're in that very privileged existence, you've still got your parents to go, hang on a second, can you help me?
Yeah.
But then equally now there's the edge of worry on all these things, which I don't think I had when I was 22. I don't think I thought too much about what label I was, or, that I saw something that I think it was Joanna Lumley was talking about. We almost do too much self-exploration now.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, again, she's a very different generation. I mean, all I can say is that I think it's really important to listen to our young people and to understand them and their difficulties. And we had different struggles. I know that when I grew up, I was lucky enough to get on the housing ladder like pretty early, and it was no big deal. It wasn't like an absolute fortune to pay a mortgage. It was fine. It was like paying rent. But you did need your parents' help probably to get on the ladder. But now it's sort of insurmountable. It's like you've got to be incredibly wealthy to So I suppose things felt achievable when I was younger, which is a good thing.
Yeah. And that optimism that, is there as much optimism? I mean, who knows? So thinking about when you were younger and the optimism that you had, what's the difference in your younger self, like say 30 years ago, to where you are now?
Well, I suppose I feel incredibly lucky that I always sort of knew what I wanted to do. So I think I told you last time, I was about 15, maybe slightly even younger. And there was this program on a Saturday afternoon, and it was about, it was a kind of magazine show. It was kind of a snippet of fashion, a snippet of careers, a snippet of this, a snippet of that. And I watched one with the fashion editor of Cosmopolitan on. And when I saw this, I just thought, that is exactly what I want to do. I didn't know it was available to me. I didn't really know it was a career. But really from that moment on, and I was a very young woman at 14, 15, I was obsessed with pop stars, as we all were. I was obsessed with fashion and beauty and all those things, which I actually ended up writing about for most of my career and still do to this day, actually. And when I saw that her name was Vivian Lynn and she was the fashion editor of Cosmopolitan, and when I saw that that was available to me, that became my absolute focus. There was no doubt that's what I wanted
Wow.
to do. So when I left the kind of education side of my career, I went into being specific about it. So I went into a journalism course, and then after that, I went out to a local newspaper. And actually, that local newspaper, I was very young at this point, 20s, early 20s. It taught me what I didn't want to do as well as what I did. And I still think that's one of the most important things you can learn. So I worked in the newsroom. I was the only girl in the newsroom. They used to send me to do the awful things like when people died and have to speak to the families. And I found it the most distressing thing ever. And it taught me there is no way I'm a news person and I couldn't bear that side of things and seeing people in deep distress. And I couldn't cope with it. It's just not my nature. And I knew very early on I wanted to interview celebrities. I wanted to do fashion. I wanted to do beauty. I wanted to do things that I was really genuinely interested in. However, soft people might have thought it, I was that person. And I understood that about myself.
So who's been your favourite interview so far? Have to ask it.
Well, my first interview was Melvin Bragg, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, and it still goes down as an absolute corker. He was deeply charming, gave me loads of time. I was a complete rookie, and he was really kind and considerate. I think my second interview was Jonathan Ross. I mean, we're talking about the 80s here. I've met some amazing women. A woman who had a really big effect on me was Paula Yates, who I thought she was a very unusual woman, very unusual attitude, very unusual look, very cool. I adored her. And over the years, I've interviewed loads of celebrities, and part of the work that I do now, I have to sort of interview a couple of celebrities a month. The last two I've interviewed, wonderful women. Oti Mabuse and Sarah Beanie, both fabulous for different reasons, but both very authentic, which I love. And you can smell that a mile off. You know what I mean?
You can't you? That's the thing, isn't it? I think that word authentic has just become so overused, and everyone keeps talking about being your authentic self, and then it's become a layer of stuff that we don't need. It's just about being real. And when you meet someone who is real, you can see it. Your intuition goes. Yeah,
it's natural. It's effortless. All of those things.
Yeah. So, what did Paula Yates teach you?
Well, I suppose to be herself. I mean, she was very unusual at the time. I saw an interview recently with Rupert Everett, who apparently they were lovers. I had no idea because obviously he's a very well-known gay man, but they were lovers for a long time. And he referred to her as Tweety Bird, and I sort of love that image of this kind of little bird with these big eyes. And, she was her own self. She was a very actually troubled person with a very difficult past, and I didn't know that when I was interviewing her. I just thought she was Bob Geldof's wife and she was riding high, and of course she was super complicated.
Yeah, as we all are, but obviously it comes out very different ways in different people as well.
But I loved that she was effortless. She was herself. Again, it's that kind of authentic thing. She didn't look like anybody else. She didn't dress like anybody else. She was her own self.
And that takes a lot for people. She was obviously quite young as well when you interviewed her there. And it's like,
she had a baby by then. I was working at the Telegraph, and I was working on the Telegraph magazine, which was the Sunday magazine then. And it was just a crazy day in the office, and nobody on the features desk could go and interview her. So it was down to me, like, Jane, can you go do it? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. They didn't realise I was going to interview one of my heroes. And I got there and she was wearing Levi 501s, which were very cool at the time, and eating toast with marmalade and just like cool and gorgeous.
Yeah. And I think that being real message, I think it took me a long time to find myself. I wasn't, it's probably in my late 30s, early 40s when I suddenly went, actually, this is who I am. And more recently, it's been supercharged, in that fact that I'm going to show up for who I am and not worry about it. How about you? Have you always known who you are? Have you always been like,
Well, now, this is a very interesting thing. I mean, sort of like Paulie Yates, I had a really troubled childhood, very unhappy childhood, and I was very unconfident, for sure, for sure. However, having said that, as I say, I knew what I wanted to do when I was 15, 16. I knew what interested me. I knew what I would be good at, and I kind of went towards it with, with a completely blinkered. It was like there was no doubt that's where I belonged. Um, so I must have had some kind of super self-understanding. And I was always into books. I was always into writing. I still do all of the same things now. It doesn't matter what age you are. I still love the same thing. So I suppose I was sort of self-aware, but I was not self-confident. That's what I would say.
that's really interesting, that difference between self-aware and self-confidence, because
Yes.
that's, that we understand who we are as a human, but then how do you put it out to the world as a self-confidence piece? And where were your pivotal moments to turn that self-awareness into self-confidence?
Well, I think it's like everything, right? Kind of feel the discomfort and just kind of do it. It's just kind of just at that interview, I was scared. Every interview, actually, there's always an element. Obviously, I'm now really experienced, but that doesn't mean I don't feel a little bit nervous, especially if it's someone I really rate or adore. Feel the fear, do it anyway. It's that thing.
Yeah. And so
And once you keep on doing that, you kind of go, do you know what? I can do it. It's fine. It's absolutely fine. What I've been here a million times before. What's so scary?
Yeah, so I was talking to Kay Richardson Walsh on the first podcast episode, and she talks about keeping the receipts in your back pocket. And so the thing that she talks about is you have to be aware of the receipts that you get in, and then you have to be aware, you have to file them, because they're your receipts, they're your evidence. That confidence needs evidence. That thing of going, right, okay, and that's a lot of lived in experience as well, isn't it? That's going. I've been along this a while now, and I can do it. I can do it. And then
absolutely, and even down to the boring stuff. So the boring stuff when you're a freelance journalist is, doing your tax returns, in all of that stuff, which I am not naturally, this is not my area. And you just get used to the fact that, look, I can do it. I've done it a million times before. It's going to be fine. I think it's the way we talk to ourselves is incredibly important. And instead of sort of saying, oh, you can't do this because you can't do maths and you can't, it's like, of course you can do it. You've done it a million times. It's all fine. It's boring, but it's a necessity,
So do you have a mantra when you get up every morning? So you've got your 12 grapes, you've got your 12 wishes. Do you have, when you're talking about how you talk to yourself, do you have a way of approaching life that you wake up with every morning?
Okay, so this is an interesting thing. So I recently, as we all do at the beginning of a new year, I've sort of tried to put really little teeny weeny things into my life that make a really nice difference. So I spoke to my sister. She lives in Australia, actually. We're super close. We talk all the time. And she's just been to Japan. So I said to her what I was doing, and I'll tell you the small things I'm doing. But she said in Japan, they refer to it as Kaizen, which is, I think, Keizen, which means the teeny weeny incremental things we do every day that really enhance our lives. So mine for the new year, I might have waylaid a few of them already, but they were like, have a peppermint tea and read my book before I go to bed. Simple little
Yeah.
but really nice, really chilled, like go to bed the right way, freezing cold nights, really dark nights, whatever. It's just a nice thing to do. I love reading, but often I just am knackered before I go to bed, so I don't bother reading. Well, actually, have a cup of tea, read your book, go to sleep. Really nice thing. Have magnesium baths in the morning, which I adore. I don't do the cold swimming thing. I'm sure I should, but I don't.
I cannot get my head around that. I keep trying, and I keep thinking,
loads of people do it. I do.
Loads of people do it, and I can see the research on Alzheimer's and dementia, and that how you refresh your brain. I can't stand it if I get in the shower and I start to run out of hot water and it gets tepid.
Me too. I'm a hot bath, but it was just teeny weeny. Oh, little just kind of stretches in the morning. having a turmeric tea at the beginning of the day. Honestly, I'm talking about minute things. But you add them all up, and at the end of the day and at the end of the week, there's a real tangible benefit from feeling calmer, just, I don't know, more focused, whatever it is. But I definitely don't give myself massive New Year goals. That's really, the 12 grapes thing is actually often really teeny weeny things, but you add them all up and it's, well, as the Japanese would say, it's kazan.
I love that. We're going to be talking about kazan all the time. It's like we need to adopt it. And it's that thing of doing something small, but then reflecting on it. So one of the things that I've started doing on Instagram is every Sunday I reflect on the week, but I do it through pictures. So I'm sort of taking a picture of something that happens every single day. So our interview today, I'm going away and taking my mum and dad to Devon for a couple of days on Thursday, so all those little things. And then I reflect on it on a Sunday, because then if you've had a bad week, which can cloud everything, you then look back and you go, hang on a second, that was a moment of joy. That was a moment of peace. That was a moment of calm. That was a moment of success. And actually, they mount up and then they feed the reward center in your brain. And then you go, this is all right, actually. It's not so bad.
I think it's true. We we always look on the bleak side, don't we? But actually, every day is have you seen the new Bridget Jones movie?
No, I'm going on Wednesday.
Okay, well, I just say take your tissues. That's all I'm saying, because it's unlike all of the others. Obviously, they've probably started off the silliest and then they've got more and more serious as she's got older.
Yeah.
But this particular one, I'm sure you know this, deals with a lot of grief. And, as we do get older, we're going to deal with more grief. And the stakes are so high. I think it's really important to enjoy those everyday luxuries of joyful moments, so that, like you say, you can look back on your week and think, look, it wasn't as bad as I thought. It's actually lovely things.
It's not been so hideous. And that mantra of enjoying those joyful moments, because, that people are going to die. Two of my best friends have stupidly corked it and gone and sat on a cloud, and I'm cross with them. But I'm not really cross with them. But it's one of those things where that happens, and it's gonna surround us all. So how do we manage with it? How do we cope with it? How do we move forward? You talked about your sister living in Australia. That's a long way away.
It really is.
That's a
I hate it a lot. But we'd probably drive each other mad if we did.
You get the joyful moments, and so many different ways of communicating that you can bring people into your life.
Yeah.
So I can't not talk to you unless we talk about Lynn Franks and Absolutely Fabulous. So did you, when you were living and breathing life in Lynn Franks, did you realise it was as brilliantly mental?
Yeah, I did. I'd wanted to work there for a long time. So when I left the newspaper I worked in, which was in Maidenhead, it's a massive newspaper, it's still there. It's called Maidenhead Advertiser. I worked there. And then I went to a PR company, and it was not right for me. It was quite dull. They dealt with weird clients that really weren't my thing. It definitely wasn't fashion. It definitely wasn't beauty. I won't mention the name of it. And the time I was there, I spent 6 months writing to Lynn Franks PR saying, I really want to work here. I really want to work here. I didn't take no for an answer.
You were focused. You knew what you wanted and you fucking went for it.
And then I eventually got the job and I started. And I remember the very first week I started, there was a massive party for something. I can't remember what it was, but it was all fashion and beauty and wonderful things. And I was sending out invites to like Simon Le Bon and people I really looked up, I adored from when I was like 14. And I kind of thought, oh my God, I've arrived. This is like fabulous. And I would go to all those parties and they were fabulous people. And it was Vivienne Westwood and John Galliano and Jean Paul Gaultier and Naina Cherry. And it was at the moment. So yes, I felt I'd arrived when I got there. I'd stuck to my guns, didn't stop writing and saying, I need to work here. This is definitely a job for me. I will work so hard. And I did work so hard, and everyone worked so hard, and it was ridiculous. But it was also, I think I told you last time, where I met so many of the most beautiful friends of my life that are still, they're lifelong friends. Because it was like being in the army. You went through the highs and the lows, and there were a lot of lows.
Yeah.
And a lot of 24-hour days and all of that.
Yeah. And you obviously you're in the world of fashion and beauty. Did you stress about what you were wearing? How did you perceive your own fashion when you were going to these parties? Did you put yourself under pressure?
I look back on what I wore then with absolute disgust, actually. I worked with really super funky people that wore, crinoline, tiny mini skirts from Vivienne Westwood. I did not do that. I was not of that camp. I've always been a really modest person, right? I never liked putting loads of skin on a show, but I worked with lots of people who wore practically nothing. And I completely thought they looked fabulous, but I was very modest and still am, actually. But I was more of the kind of, I used to go to Camden a lot of weekends. I used to buy a lot of secondhand jackets and sailor trousers. It was that kind of vibe.
Yeah. And then when you turned up at the party, did you do the comparison piece? Or were you
yeah. And I probably look quite old for my age. And actually, when I look back on what I was like when I was really young, and I was probably 23 when I worked at Lynn Franks, I do think I led a slightly middle-class, middle-aged life. And that was because I sort of thought that's what I should do. And I was with a boyfriend I'd been with, like my first big boyfriend, and we had dinner parties at the weekend. Do you know what I mean? I lived a sort of really a life that's more for the age I am now than was then. Yeah.
And you mentioned that word that I just want to explore a bit, that word should. You did what you should do,
I sort of went with, as we all do to a certain extent, the kind of expectations of me rather than what I felt comfortable with. I mean, while I was at Lynn Franks and I was there for a few years, it was a very, early part of my life, and I was living with my boyfriend, the one that, I was going to marry, but in the end, I decided not to. And then I went traveling a lot. I went to Australia. I lived in New York. I did lots of different things and changed my life entirely. And, I suppose that's a part of looking at people's expectations of me and then thinking, do you know what? I don't think I want to do that. I don't think I want to be middle-aged at this age. I think I actually want to travel, go clubbing, experience life, meet people from all over the world, all of those things.
So what were the expectations of you at that time? Expectations you put on yourself?
They're probably self-imposed to a certain extent, but I think in those years, which is the pretty early to mid-80s, I would have said you get married pretty young. You have your kids by the time you're 26.
Yeah.
Now, of course, it's a completely different world where probably at the earliest you think about having a child is maybe 10 years older.
Yeah. Yeah. And what are your expectations of yourself now?
Well, I think it's to enjoy life. I mean, certainly my list for this year was to travel a lot, to enjoy life, like you, kind of maybe take all of the training I've got and maybe do other things and add to it rather than just sitting in the writing space.
Yeah.
And everything's about joy, isn't it? I mean, everything's about meeting more people, enjoying life more, making the most of every single day, not taking things for granted, spending lots of time with my son, all of that, really.
And I love that. Everything is about joy, because I think we grow up thinking that it might be about something else, and this is one of the questions I was going to ask you is, what does success look like for you now?
Well, I suppose success is going to bed feeling really good every night, right? And not having worries on your shoulder. I actually think worry and stress is literally the worst thing for humankind. I really, really do. I think the best thing is to feel honest, happy, complete with your choices, and to be honest and complete with everyone around you.
So how do you do that, Jane?
Tell the truth. If you're having a bad day, that's completely fine. My son called me this morning. and as he calls it, having a rant. Well, I'm here. He can have a rant. That's absolutely fine. But he won't take it to bed. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Be there for people. Let people be there for you. I think it's that, really.
I love it. And when you're talking about joy, and you talked earlier about your little teeny weeny moments, your kaizen.
Yeah,
Kaizen. And a lot of that I heard was about peace, like the
I
stuff
think
that you put.
peace is the absolute, that is the goal, right? I mean, most of us don't live in peace at all. But
Yeah.
I really hope that as I get older, I live in peace a lot more.
Yeah.
It really is little things. Like my dog's driving me mad. She wants to go out. Like, I love my dog. I love going out for walks. My dog, it's the really simple things. And they all add up to a day well spent, a week well spent, a month well spent, a year well spent. These little things. Enjoy the moments. And also, I would say, don't stop making friends, because I think I'm friends with lots of younger people now because I spend lots of time at like PR events and whatever. And everyone's really, really much younger than me now. And that's cool. That's fine. I've got loads to learn from them. And I hope I can be some kind of wisdom, any questions they've got,
Yeah. And sharing that wisdom, isn't it? It's about sharing it. And that whole being intentional about the now is sometimes, I think, what we've forgotten, because we're always looking at the next mountain and what's the next thing that we've got to achieve and where's the next thing that we've got to go and what have we got to do next and what's on the list. And, I was walking the dog this morning and I was just, and there's a little park down from where I live and there was no kids running around because it's half term here. And actually, it was just so peaceful. And I had to sense check with myself and go, notice this. Notice that what you're doing now feels peaceful. And that's really good, because then you go into the next thing that might not feel peaceful, but we've not noticed when we're feeling good and when it is good. And when we sat there reading our book and drinking our tea at night.
Yeah, completely.
So if you were talking to your younger self now, would you give any different advice?
Well, I suppose I would say, as I said to you earlier, I wasn't very confident when I was young, but actually my instincts were really good. So I suppose it would be believe in yourself. It's that age-old one, but it's very important. Stop the noise, believe in yourself, go with what you know to be right. And I think that's all you can do in life, right?
Yeah. So it's making it relevant and making it real, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the score, Jane. You know that what happens at the end of our conversations. That I asked all my guests for their 6-word memoir, which comes from the joys of Ernest Hemingway's shortest story ever told, and it might be a mantra, it might be your approach to life. Or what's your 6-word memoir?
I think it's 5 words, and it is scared of heights, still climbing.
Oh,
and I think it is a little bit of a pat on the back to myself, because however scared you are, just keep moving forward. And I'm not kidding. I am terrified of heights, right? And I've been in situations in my life where I've thought I panicked. I don't know if I can do this. And it's just to say, you're safe, you're fine, trust yourself, just move forward.
And you have to have that voice with yourself, don't you? You can't rely on anyone else for it.
Yeah, although in my younger self, I think I would have loved voices to tell me that, but it just wasn't available.
Yeah.
But I now know how important that is. And I really try and pass that on to my son, his girlfriend, younger people I meet, because that's what I would have wanted when I was younger.
And do you think your pivotal moments have come from when you were younger, going through all the different experiences that you've had, whether it's traveling, whether it's living in New York, or is it more recent times that you've had this recognition of peace and the little things and the still climbing?
I suppose it's like you sort of, everything's incremental, like we were talking about before. So you start to notice patterns, don't you, as you get older? So you start to think, oh, actually, that wasn't a coincidence. I did that. So, I think that improves with age for sure. You trust yourself more, and you don't look to external things to validate you. I think that's really important.
So do you think that's the most important thing about our midlife chapter?
Yeah, I do actually.
Yeah.
Faith, you've done this. You got this.
Yeah. And then living it and finding the joy.
Absolutely. And I am really deeply grateful for all the good stuff. You know, recognize the little things that make up a good life.
Oh, Jane, thank you. As ever, it's been bloody brilliant talking to you. I've loved it. It's like a little zone of zen that,
it is. It's
that reminds me all about the power that we have to actually, make it happen, but make the right stuff happen, because
Yeah. And I think it's something really lovely about doing podcasts, actually, that's like you actually kind of physically say it. Like you might not have actually thought, that's what I mean. When it comes out your mouth, you think, oh God, yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, it's that validation piece again, isn't it? So, and I'm so taking on the 12 grapes. I'm going to go and do
such a lovely thing to do.
Brilliant idea.
Yeah, a little lovely thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's absolutely stunning. Thank you so much. It's been bloody lovely talking to you, and I shall no doubt be bugging you again soon.
Anytime.
As we button up another episode of It's Got Pockets, remember that just like that perfect dress with hidden storage, you've got pockets of potential. You can be exactly who you are meant to be with no one getting in your way, not even yourself. Just remember, you're not done yet. That plan B or plan C might be waiting for you. If you've enjoyed this episode and would like to work with me, or simply want to connect, come and find me at sarahknightconsultancy.co.uk. On Instagram, I'm Ministry of Midlife, or on LinkedIn, you'll find me as NightES. See you next time.